You're listening to the Loyalty Minute, the show that helps you build better customer loyalty and more valuable user engagement. With your host, Rob Gallo.
Welcome, loyal listeners, to another episode of the Loyalty Minute. I'm your host, Rob Gallo, and today I'm eager and excited to chat with Mickie Kennedy. Mickie is the founder and president of eReleases, the small business leader for press release distribution. Now celebrating 22 years in business, he's an expert at helping small businesses increase their visibility and credibility, and he's here today to share some valuable insights with you. Thanks for joining me, Mickie.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Great. So to get a little bit more color of your background and eReleases, you started at 22, almost 23 years ago. Give us a little history of who you are, where you came from, and how you got where you are now.
Sure. So I had finished a graduate degree, an MFA in creative writing with an emphasis in poetry. And I assumed I'd be waiting tables the rest of my life. But after a short stint of doing that, I realized being on your feet 10 to 12 hours a day, it's really taxing. So I decided I was going to get an office job, and I started a telecom startup. And one of the jobs that I did because of my English background was put together press releases and send them out. And at that time it was through fax. And so I would be programming a fax machine with 100 numbers, because that's as many as it held, hit send, take all day. The next day I delete those numbers and put like 80 or 90 more in, because our media list was like around 180 or 190. And a lot of journalists started to call and say, hey, I like all these tables and numbers you have. Could you just email it to me as a Word document? And so it's easier for them to work with. Mm-hmm. And so that's when the light bulb went off, and it seemed like email would be a natural progression over faxing. And I mentioned it to my boss, and he was like, that's a great idea. You should start that. And so I spent about a year reaching out to journalists, asking them if I could put them in my database. Originally, I was going to be tech oriented. But what I found was I'd go to these tech editors and they're like, I'm now doing fashion. I'm now doing retail. And so I would just change the categories, and I just started building all categories. And so I launched eReleases about a year after that, and it'll be 23 years, October. And it's been a fun ride. Over the years, PR Newswire reached out to me and said, you should also send your releases through us, the Newswire. And I pointed out that my customers pay $200 to $400 on average, and they charge over $1,000 to move a press release nationally. And so we put our heads together, tried to decide how we could make it a win-win. They acknowledged that my customers are never going to be their customers or what their salespeople are looking to go after. And we chose next day distribution as a default when you place an order with us, so that their team and their overnight team, which isn't very active, can work on it. So it wasn't costing them additional labor as well to get those releases set up. And so it's been a great partnership. It's been a fun ride. I've definitely learned a lot over the years. I think 10 years ago, I was really obsessed with writing the best, most perfect press release and thinking that was the holy grail. And that's how you got media coverage. And that shifted to it's all about strategy and developing something that's newsworthy and taking the journalist into account as a gatekeeper. And how can I draft my announcement in a way that he would want to share it with his audience? And it's less about what's in it for me, but what's in it for them. And if you can solve that, then you can definitely get more media coverage rather than just your average press release.
Great stuff. So that really, in my estimation, that dovetails into our listeners thinking about customer and brand loyalty. So brand storytelling, right? That's where it starts. So a company's press release, I think, at least in my estimation, is more than just news about what they're doing, but it sets the tone for the culture of a business, right? For a company, what their ideology is and why someone might want to do business with them. But there's probably a lot of people that have press releases that are released for the fact of just maintaining their name in the news media, right? Sure. But before we get into the nitty gritty of business and customer loyalty and brand loyalty, let me ask you, what do you find in the space that you're in is the most useful for your clients in terms of getting PR out there? Is it attracting new business, or is it maintaining existing business?
I think it's attracting new business. I think that that's the biggest opportunity for customers who are looking to do PR, because if they get articles in their trade publications or in their audience, exposure, of course, people who already knew about them but maybe aren't part of their lead pipeline will become, part of their lead pipeline. And for, existing customers, it's just good to reinforce that. But I think that a lot of people look at it with the opportunity for new customers and people who just aren't aware that you exist as a solution.
Right. Interesting. All right. Well, we're gonna swing back to that, but for right now, from a customer loyalty standpoint, I want to find out what Mickie Kennedy is loyal to, brands or services or features in certain companies, and why.
I am very loyal to American Express. They years ago gave me the Plum card where I get 2% cash back. I heard that they've lowered it to 1.5%, but I'm grandfathered in as long as I spend more than $5,000 a month, and I spend considerably more. I think I rack up around $40,000 a year in cash back that goes back into my company through that 2% cash back. So it's very worthwhile for me. And for that reason, I just love American Express. And if someone doesn't take American Express, I'm always like beating them up and saying, you really should, because they always complain about the high fees, which could be like 3.75%. But what people don't realize is these high reward Visa and MasterCards can be up to 4.5 and 4.75, because that's how they afford those rewards, is to be even higher than American Express. So you can't restrict those. If you take Visa and MasterCard, you have to take all Visa and MasterCards, even those reward ones. And so I think, if you're especially in the B2B space, it's a no-brainer that you should be taking American Express. I think about a third of my customers use American Express. And so I just see it as a cost of doing business, and they're good to me when it comes to my usage of it. So,
yeah, I'm the same way. I mean, I had a story where I probably mentioned this on one of my previous episodes, but I think it's worth retelling. The value to me as a consumer using it, right? I purchased, I had to have my pool open, my swimming pool open in New York. This is probably 20 years ago. And the guy said it's going to be $1,200. And I thought, well, that's a lot of money, but whatever. It had a big diving board and a slide, and needed the cover come off. It was green, and they put everything together or what have you. So anyway, the guy leaves, and the pool was still pea green. And I said, basically he took the cover off and put the diving board on. And I was like, this is ridiculous. I said, I'd be willing to pay you $300 for that, but I'm not paying you $1,200. So he wouldn't budge. He wouldn't come down. So I called American Express. I said, listen, I don't want to be an idiot about it, but it's just not fair. And I took pictures, showed him the whole thing. Anyway, long story short is they actually ended up paying the bill on my behalf, because I guess he was a good merchant for them as well. They didn't want to lose him as a merchant. But then they sent me flowers as a thank you for still using American Express. And I've been a card member since 1985.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, and anytime I call them, they'll get on the phone, they'll answer, in perfect English diction that I can understand, which is an important factor to me. But anyway, getting onto the business side of it, Mickie, let's turn the tables and put you in as you market your business to other businesses, and you get them on board. How do you think about loyalty when it comes to keeping your customers loyal to you?
Right. So I think it's really difficult for an online company to make a deep connection with someone. So I do lots of things in my business to try to establish those relationships and build ties. When someone comes in as a new customer, we send them a welcome email with a picture of us, thanking them by name on a whiteboard. We send them a book with a letter. The book is about press release strategies, so it's something they can use. We also come up with ideas for their next press release. We actually write ideas based on their first press release and looking at their website, what might be some good strategic ideas for them for their next press release. So we're really trying to get them to buy into a PR campaign, because a lot of people will do one press release, and then if it doesn't work, they assume PR just doesn't work. But the thing is, a PR campaign should be a series of 6 to 8 press releases, and it should be on various different strategic approaches until you find one that works. And then you try to determine, can you replicate it, or tweak it slightly, and go from there. And for some people, it just works again and again. I have one client that only does surveys and studies, and that's a good hack for anyone. If you feel you're not newsworthy and you don't have anything to announce, do a survey in your industry. Right now is a prime opportunity for that, because there's just been so much uncertainty for the last year and a half. And I think that's going to progress forward for the next year and a half. Is my take on it. And I think that right now people would want to know how people feel in your industry. Are you hiring? Are you spending as much on marketing as you were 2 years ago or a year ago? Do you plan on spending less or more in the future? I think all of that information would be really helpful in your industry. And you can also pepper it with some additional questions that might be really relevant. And I always suggest to throw in 1 or 2 oddball questions. You'd be surprised how many times those get picked up, and I've even had them go viral more times than I can even think about. But I had a local auto repair shop in Pennsylvania, and their questionnaire to other independent auto repair shops was, what's the strangest thing a customer left in their car for you? And it was an open field where people wrote in, and people loved it. Statistically, there was no relevance here because every answer was unique, but the media, auto trade publications in several newspapers really loved it. And, they would pick and choose what their favorites were and include in the articles that were written about it. And, that worked for them. And, their big hang up was, I'm just this auto repair shop. I don't know anything about being an expert in my industry. I said, you don't have to be an expert. You just have to be the author of that study. And then they're like, well, we don't know who to send it to. And I'm like, there are dozens of independent and small trade associations that will gladly send out your survey link in exchange for a mention in the press release. Mm-hmm. And the first one they reached out to was the Independent Auto Repair Shops of America, and they said sure. And they shared it on social media and sent an email to their customers, and about 800 of them responded, and it worked very well. That's something anyone can do. It's not rocket science, but it is the type of thing that people like. And right now is a prime opportunity for doing a survey or study because of people wanting to know how other people in their industry feel.
Yeah, it's very true. I mean, there's lots of ways. In fact, this podcast was born out of exactly that. I mean, I started a loyalty company, software as a service, that we built this platform, and to get in front of the right audience, I was listening to podcasts, and the guys said, start your own, become an expert in the field. So I know loyalty. I mean, we built a loyalty program in the casino that I started in 1997 from scratch. So I understand loyalty. I mean, if you ever want to see customer loyalty, you look at the casino industry and the airline industry. They mastered it, right? So doing that, but I love press releases, don't get me wrong. But I think the interaction of a video podcast is powerful. It's really powerful. And our listeners just love it. So you did mention one thing, though, Mickie, and I had a question. When you said you do like a series of 7 press releases, let's say 6 or 7 press releases, is it on the same subject matter?
No, it almost never is. The only time that it would be is if the first one just killed it and you're continuing to do releases of a similar theme to see if they'll continue to work, and they do. I've had that happen with some clients. There was a local carpet company in New Jersey, and we did 5 releases, nothing. And then we decided to do a release talking about marketing and how difficult it is for local carpet companies to market against the big box home improvement stores. And it did really well. I think 10 to 12 floor trade publications picked it up. And so we just continued to do marketing releases. And over the next 6 months, we ended up getting over 30 clips in total from trade publications, local newspaper, and a local state, New Jersey magazine as well. And the smart thing they did is they took all the clippings and put them together. And whenever they give someone a quote, they would pull the book out and thumb through it with them and show that they've been picked up in all these national publications. And they started converting about 20% more leads as a result of that. They called it their big brag book. And, that credibility of being in there, no one else is going to give them a quote, is going to have, Floor Trade Weekly and all these other publications writing articles about them. But here's a company that's local to them that has. So even if they're a little bit more, they're willing to spend it. And what they found is it's not so much that people are willing to spend a little bit more, because they said they always tried to come in really close to what they felt the big box home improvement stores charge, but to educate the customer that they use a superior padding, and that the people that do the installations are salaried people who generally work for their lifetime, and they're not people that you have to come back in 6 months and restretch the carpet, which happens a lot when you bring these contractors in that Home Depot and Lowe's hires that don't have carpet experience. They just have a home improvement license and they're available for work, and that's all that Home Depot and Lowe's requires. They don't even have to be carpet installers or anything like that. So there's a lot of mistakes that happen out there, and the customer said, we've always tried to educate people, but they never really believed us or listened until we started to show them that we are bona fide experts and recognized in our industry.
Yeah. I think being a category expert, a subject matter expert is powerful. It opens doors. So even like I said, in this podcast, I've had CEOs of major corporations that would normally never answer an email, right? But when they have the ability to talk about customer loyalty, their brand on this show, it's like, okay, it's a great opportunity. And it's led to, not only business relationships, but personal relationships, and it's powerful stuff. So from when you think about press releases and the companies that you do business with, I'm assuming it's a wide variety of companies that you have under your umbrella.
Right.
And you probably, Mickie, I'm assuming are I wouldn't say an expert, but you seem to dig deep into each of the companies that you do business with to understand what their MO is and help them construct it in such a way that it makes sense for the end user or reader, or viewer of the press release to get the message across.
We do with our higher end clients. A lot of people just use us a la carte, so we don't get the experience to give them advice or anything like that. But we're very available. When you call eReleases or chat with us, you're speaking to an editor. We have no salespeople. That's a really important thing, I feel, from a loyalty standpoint. There's no quotas, no commissions. I want my people to be upfront and honest with people. And if we feel we're not a good fit or we're not sure that press releases are going to work, we're very upfront and just tell you we're not sure. It would just be a gamble. Sometimes those gambles pay off, but sometimes they don't. And sometimes we just don't know based on what we see and don't see.
So when it comes to loyalty within eReleases, for example, how do you think about, obviously what American Express does for you is cash back, but I'm assuming you don't have a loyalty program, or maybe you have discounts, but what do you do to have customers maintain their loyalty to you as opposed to going to a competitor?
Right. So we do special event sales 4 times a year. And it's a 50 to 70% price reduction for buying multiple releases. And we make those available to the customers, and it's sort of like a special event, and they seem to love it, and it creates a win-win. By bundling them together, we're able to lower the price where we couldn't effectively do it for just a one-off press release or something like that. And it gets them to buy into the idea that press releases are PR campaigns, and that there's something that you have to continue to do and continue to learn from, and they grow organically as your market grows and as things change.
What about influencers. I mean, that's obviously all the rage now. Everybody's using some influencer in their market. I'm actually in the process of making an acquisition for another company right now with my son. But it was interesting. And when I did some research, some due diligence on this company, they've got influencers that, not by the thousands, but, a couple of hundred solid influencers that are getting 30 or 40,000 views of their videos on a regular basis, which is quite interesting. I don't know if that works in PR per se, but it is a form of PR.
It is. And the one good thing I will say is that with the Newswire, 15 years ago or so, bloggers were really big, and but the Newswire would not accept them as a journalist or as a source. And after a while, they started to accept them and allow them to sign up and receive releases and stuff like that. The press releases are pretty public, so they're out there, but there's a lot of power for having access to the Newswire, where if you have a login, you can actually look at certain feeds. You can create tags so that only press releases that mention these words appear, or exclude some with certain words. So you can make it very sophisticated and personal. And that's where the real value of being a member is. And so, I saw that slowly evolve where bloggers were accepted. Now, they're very accepting of social media influencers as a source. As a matter of fact, several in the fashion industry, Instagram media influencers are sources with the Newswire, and they receive the things and they decide to, if they see something really cool, turn it into an image or take the image that's there and share it with their followers. And so I think that they are a natural extension of media. And I think that the Newswire has been really smart about the evolving nature of media and how we get our content. So it's really good to see how difficult they were with bloggers and how open they are now with social media influencers. It's a complete 180 with them. But I think it's the, if they want to grow and to be relevant, they have to accept that media comes from all different types of places.
Yeah. At the same time, you do have to be careful of compensation that they may be getting from the brand. And, I think of like the points guy in the loyalty space. He's probably the end all be all when it comes to travel and loyalty. But he does mention on his website that he is getting compensation for the mentions and stuff. But he does still write in such a way that it's informative and it's not pushy. But, he does make money from the mentions that he does on the site. Right. So it's a catch-22 in that respect, that you'd have to be a trusting source in the first place. And then, because I remember like back in the day, Consumer Reports, right? Or even CNET, right? I would look at CNET to evaluate what software to download, and I would take their advice. I know they're getting paid. In fact, the Points Guy and CNET are both owned by the same conglomerate that has tons of different sites that you probably heard of. And it's just, it's that fine line of news. And especially now when, in the last 2 years or 3 years, with the quote unquote fake news being all the thing now, it's hard to take it at face value, what is real and what's not real, because of the source that it's coming from.
Right.
But I guess in your line of work, Mickie, when you're writing a press release for and on behalf of a company, you're speaking for that company to their potential customers, and it's obvious that it's a press release. Right. So it's not some sort of advertisement or something like that. So I guess it can work that way. It's not a problem. So let's really quickly turn to the future of loyalty. And I know we didn't really get into the nitty-gritty of loyalty like I do with most guests, because your business is a little bit different than most of the prior guests are in the loyalty space or have companies that have loyalty programs. But as you think about loyalty, brand loyalty, from either you being a consumer or you running a business, what does the future of customer loyalty and brand loyalty look like to you, Mickie?
I think it's getting away from gimmicks. I think that For me, it's you just be solid. You provide good customer service. And, if I have to use the customer service, make it very easy for me. I had to call my alarm company twice over the past 6 months, and it was very difficult. And the first time they sent me a review and said, "How did we do?" And I was like, "Oh, great." And then I just kept getting charged my old rate for 2 months. And so I called back, and it was night and day. They said, "Oh, I don't know why that didn't happen, but now I can't give you a refund, but we're going to extend your alarm contract an additional 2 months. So you're going into a new plan, and it'll be at the lower rate." And I just felt like, oh, this was just difficult. And then they sent another survey, and I was a little more brutal then. And it's because I gave you one time to solve this, and you didn't provide me with good customer service. And it's not my problem as to why that happened. Hopefully the second person figured it out, but I haven't been charged yet for the new month. So we'll see if it was resolved, because if it's not, I'm going to be really, really upset. I think that at the end of the day, it's about sharing and being open with your customer, giving them educational resources. In my business, it's all about strategy. And I realize that's the difference between a press release that doesn't get articles written about it and one that does. And so I'm really big in educating my clients, and I don't charge for it. I want them to take advantage of it and learn how to write better press releases, because I know if they get media pickup, they're going to continue to use press releases. So I want it to work. I hate seeing press releases that announce a personnel change. Judy was elevated from associate HR to, vice president HR. Very few people care about that outside of maybe one trade publication in your local newspaper. So just email it directly to them. 2 places. It's not a lot of work. Don't spend money to send something over the wire that's really that lackluster, because it's not going to perform. And I see people spend a lot of money doing that. And I know that if they had picked something that was a little more strategic or important, they could potentially get real articles written about them, because that's the goal of a press release, isn't to get the press release on a different website, but to get the press release turned into an article so that a journalist actually wrote something and, shared your story in an authentic and unique way.
And what sort of success rate do you think you had in that, Mickie? With, because I totally agree. When you have a press release, it's, a little, I don't want to say it's egocentric, but it's, it's you writing about yourself or your company writing about itself. But when you get somebody else to then pick up on it and write a true bona fide story about it, what do you think the success rate is in something like that with your clients?
With my average client that comes through, I would say the success rate is probably under 3% that get unique articles written about them. That being said, I have this strategy class that I created for my customers that's completely free, but I've also bundled it with a product offering where you buy 6 press releases, you get access to my staff for coaching, and it's all built around the strategies of this video training. And I have a guarantee that if you don't get 6 articles from 6 press releases, we'll continue to send your press releases for free until you do. And so far, I haven't had to give a single free press release, because the strategies in it are so solid that when you do 6 of them, you probably have had 2 that probably did really well. The survey and study is one of those things. And the average articles that get written when you do a survey or study in your industry is generally between 6 and 14 articles. I've seen over 30. I've seen as little as 4. But it's not, if you model what you're going to do in a way that's strategic, you can certainly get the media coverage. What I have difficulty with is so many people have an idea of what they want to do, and then they just push a couple press releases and nothing really happens. And if you step back and you approach it strategically and through the lens of seeing the journalist as a gatekeeper, and how do I get through that gatekeeper, then you can sort of figure it out, and it works.
Well, I think what we're going to do is, after we finish this episode, I think you and I are going to talk about one of my other businesses that could probably use something like that. It's a complex sale. but it's simple and it's just hard to understand. But I think maybe you might be able to help me there. So, basically what we're going to do now is we're going to wrap it up, only because, the attention span is usually 20, 25 minutes for the clients, for our listeners. But I do want to thank you for your time. I think it was really valuable, Mickie, and insightful. I think our listeners really got a lot out of it. And if they want to get a hold of you, what's the best way they could do that?
The website's eReleases.com. There's chat and phone numbers there. My social media is in the lower right. LinkedIn's the best place to reach me. And if anybody does want to take advantage of that free video masterclass on strategy, it's less than an hour. It's completely free, and it's available at eReleases.com/plan, PLAN. And I've been told that I should make it a paid course, but I'll keep it there for free for now.
Good stuff. Well, I'll put it in the show notes as well. I want to thank our listeners for being loyal listeners and investing some of their valuable time with us. If you feel you received value from the show, we would appreciate a 5-star review on your favorite podcast streaming service. If you know someone else who you think might get some value for listening to the show, please do share. That's how we grow. To listen to this and other Loyalty Minute episodes, please visit theloyaltyminute.com. Enjoy.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to tune in tomorrow for your next edition of the Loyalty Minute.